Olivia Landis, joined by Eric Allen here at the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center, where the New York Jets just wrapped up a practice in preparation for their Week 5 game against the Denver Broncos. But first, this is some beautiful weather to start fall in October, right?
It's unbelievable. No leaves out here right now dancing around. But listen, home sweet home. That is the theme for the New York Jets in October, because they have a 3-game home stretch here. As far as got the after Jacksonville, they'll come to I'm losing my train of thought here. Denver Broncos in town, and that's followed by the Indianapolis Colts, and then of course the Minnesota Vikings. I started thinking about Jacksonville, but October is all about making hay at MetLife Stadium.
And it'll definitely be nice for the Jets to be home for 3 straight games in a row after having 3 of their first 4 games on the road. But let's right now jump to Jacksonville. And one of the biggest takeaways, EA, for the Jets during that game was Jacksonville had over 500 yards of offense, and the possession time was nearly 2-1 in Jacksonville's favor. So how can the Jets defense better control this game?
They got to communicate better moving forward. And Jamal Adams talked about it this week. He said the players were going to get together Friday and discuss the game plan, a players-only meeting. But Todd Bowles said, hey, listen, that happens all throughout the National Football League on Fridays as you go over the game plan. The Jets have to defend those shallow crossers better, the dumps to the backs, out of the backfield, the running backs, and they have to get off the field on 3rd down. Unfortunately, against Jacksonville, Blake Bortles, he controlled this ball game throughout the air, and the Jets were unable to get off the field on 3rd down. Communication's got to be better, because I don't think they were going to destroyed up front in the trenches. What happened was there were some mental errors, some over-aggressiveness, and the guys just have to trust their keys, and they'll be all right moving forward.
So hopefully the defense is able to recognize some of those moving forward and translate that onto the field heading into playing against Denver this weekend. But another thing I want to talk about is the Jets offense. The Jets offense struggled a little bit this past weekend against the Jaguars with the run game, especially. Bilal Powell, Isaiah Crowell didn't see too much on the ground this past weekend, which, in turn kind of makes things a little bit tougher on Sam Darnold.
Well, it puts too much pressure on Sam Darnold, because the Jets had only 14 carries on the ground. They want to have more balance moving forward. They've all talked about that this week. What happened against Jacksonville is, while the defense wasn't able to get off the field on 3rd down, the Jets weren't gaining. They weren't having positive gains on 1st and 2nd down. So a lot of times, Sam Darnold and company were in 3rd and long, and they were unable to sustain drives, sustain possessions. The other thing that happened for the second time in 3 weeks is the Jets were playing from behind in terms of a double-digit deficit, and that meant you had to put the ball into Sam Darnold's hands. There were some good things and positives that we're going to get to here, Olivia. Actually, that happened against Jacksonville, but unfortunately they didn't get that early rhythm. And for this team to be successful offensively, and what Jeremy Bates wants, he wants to balance attacks.
You touched on it a little bit, but let's dive deeper into 3rd down conversions. We saw Quincy Enunwa back in Cleveland have some very clutch 3rd down conversions that led into the 2 touchdowns for the Jets. Moving forward, how does this offense help put Sam and just the players in general in a better position to convert on 3rd downs?
It's all about, having positive things happen on 1st and 2nd down. When you're playing 3rd and longs, and we're going to be talking about the Denver Broncos here this week moving ahead, you think about Von Miller, the premier edge rusher in the National Football League, and Bradley Chubb. You can't have those guys teeing off in 3rd and long situations. You need to have positive gains on 1st and 2nd down. I was encouraged, though, against Jacksonville, that Sam Darnold did take some shots down the field, because Denver, in their game plan in this week, they're going to have to be cognizant of that, because the Jets are going to hit on a couple of these moving forward.
So there were some positives out of this past game against the Jaguars. Let's touch first on the defense. 3 takeaways overall, which is a very big deal considering the Jets' defense has performed week to week with takeaways and a lot of pass rushing ability, which is not necessarily something Jets fans, I'm sure, thought they were going to see out of this team this year, was the pass rushing ability, but it's happening.
Well, the Jets are only one of 3 teams in the National Football League who have 10 sacks and 10 takeaways. I liked how they kept on fighting against Jacksonville, especially in that second half. Avery Williamson came up with a PD, and that ball was picked off by Darryl Roberts, and then Williamson made a strip, and Trumaine Johnson recovered, and he took it inside the 5, and that set up the Jets' only touchdown of the day. And then finally Buster Screen, the veteran quarterback, he made a strip, a rip, and he recovered it as well. So the takeaways are big. Anytime you're +3 in the turnover differential department, that's a positive sign. But the Jets had too many miscues. But overall, yeah, the defense is doing some good things. It's a prideful group. They gave up 500 yards last week. I anticipate they'll be ready to go Sunday.
Earlier you said how Sam was taking shots down the field against the Jaguars. What were some other positive takeaways on the offensive side of the ball during that game?
Well, it's just that. When I look at Darnold, he talked today and he talked earlier this week about he's seeing things clearer. He's recognizing the pressures. He's recognizing the coverages. So those are good things from the rookie quarterback, as you're seeing his stats right here throughout the first quarter of the season, completing about 58% of his passes with the 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. The other thing he did against Jacksonville, he's turnover free. So that was a positive thing. And in the second half, it's 25-12. He is streaking Robbie Anderson. If he hits that pass, it's a 25-19 game. And despite being outplayed largely for most of that game, for the duration of that game, the Jets had an opportunity to get back in it. We saw Jermaine Kearse with the 3rd down conversion there. Jordan Leggett got in the end zone for the first time in his NFL career, too. So I think that should do some wonders for his confidence.
So although the record might not show it, Sam Darnold still making some positive steps. Only played 4 professional football games so far in his career. Let's dive into which player you have taking off against the Denver Broncos this week.
I said Avery Williamson because he's been taken off, but how about Henry Anderson? The guy up front, Mike McCagnon acquired him for a 7th-round pick from the Indianapolis Colts on draft weekend. He already has 2.5 sacks. That is a career high. And his 3 PDs last week, also a career high. He said during film study we saw Blake Bortles with that low pass release, and he had to get his hands up. He did just that. He is giving the Jets some juice up front. We mentioned before, Olivia, that the Jets so far this season, 10 sacks. Well, 2.5 of those go to Henry Anderson. And he's going to be showing up on tape for other teams, and he's going to be helping Leonard Williams and company up front, because you're going to have to pay attention to what this guy can do. He's tall, he's big. I think he's becoming more explosive, and he's learning as he goes. So encouraging signs from big Henry Anderson.
Yeah, we aren't the only ones that Henry Anderson has impressed so far. Coach Todd Bowles spoke about how Henry Anderson is an asset to the team, and he also mentioned a little bit of an analysis on the Denver Broncos this week.
Todd, Henry Anderson's been a real consistent presence for you. Can you talk a little bit about his play the last month, and is this exceeding what you might have hoped for when you guys took him out?
Well, we knew he's a steady Eddie guy, and he plays multiple positions, and he can help us. His technique is outstanding. He's tough. He's very intelligent and always in the right place, and he's made some plays for us.
Todd, how do you sharpen the communication on defense, other than harping on it that you do in practice? Is there anything different that you can do to minimize those types of mistakes?
I mean, we harp on it all the time, and some of them weren't even communication issues. They were individual issues that had nothing to do with communication. So we clean up some mistakes and some sure things, and we'll move on from there.
What jumps off the tape about Denver?
They run the ball very well. They got 2 explosive backs, 2 huge receivers, 1 quick receiver. Quarterbacks playing good balls, offensive lines blocking. Obviously, they have premier pass rushers. They have great corners. Brandon Marshall's playing good ball in the middle. They have smart safeties and very solid, disciplined D linemen. Well-coached team.
How do you block Von Miller?
You try to slow them down, try to do some things, offset them. They're going to face a great pass rush every week. We just have to try and do what we do better than they do what they do.
Welcome back to Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. I'm Olivia Landis, joined by Eric Allen, and we're here at the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center, a beautiful October fall day. Yeah, we just heard from Coach Todd Bowles talking about Henry Anderson and analyzing the Denver Broncos this weekend. What were you able to hear from some of the players this week inside the locker room when they were talking about moving on from Jacksonville and looking forward to the Broncos this weekend?
Let's first talk about the conference calls on Monday. Trumaine Johnson said, "We're not going to panic." Leonard Williams, the veteran defensive lineman, said, "We have to dominate at home," and he likes the guys' attitude inside the locker room. The aforementioned Todd Bowles came out and said after the Jacksonville game that the Jets have to take a long look at the mirror. He thought they took a step back against Jacksonville. With that being said, we just got out of the locker room, Olivia, and I thought the Jets were upbeat. They're focused on the task at hand. Henry Anderson said, when you think about the Broncos, it all starts up front with their run game. So the Jets are going to have to take care of a Broncos team that is running the football very well here early in the 2018 season. But to a man, I think all these guys are talking about accountability and also that there's a lot of football left to be played. The Jets have only played one quarter of the season. There's 12 games remaining. And again, it is a 3-game homestand. So you got a chance to make some hay, but you have to focus on the task at hand, and that is the Denver Broncos.
Something that really stood out to me this week, and you wrote about this earlier in the week, EA, was how Leonard Williams was talking about every player plays for one another.
Yep.
Now, those aren't his exact quotes, but he was talking about how each person on this team plays for one another, which is what he really likes about this team. And you need that in a leader like Leonard Williams. You need a guy with his veteran presence to say that inside the locker room and to encourage his teammates.
It's a good vibe in this place because I don't think the guys are too down. I think they were really frustrated and upset by what happened in Jacksonville, but they've been able to turn the page. And you mentioned Williams. He's the guy who got a sack of Blake Bortles last week. And again, that is one of the positive early signs for this defense is what they've been doing in terms of getting after opposition quarterbacks. And this week it's going to be Case Keenum. Here's a veteran who's poised in the pocket, and he'll stand in there. But he's made some mistakes early this season. Case Keenum's got 6 interceptions. If the Jets can continue to get a solid pass rush against Keenum, maybe that defensive backfield will have opportunities this week to take the football away. And that would really help a young quarterback in Sam Darnold and their offense trying to find its way.
Well, speaking of Sam Darnold, Leonard Williams wasn't the only player inside the locker room that was sounding like a veteran. Sam himself was sounding like a veteran when he was saying, I feel like I'm so close to starting to click with my receivers, and how he's saying one team, one goal, taking it one game at a time.
Very impressive. The kid continues to show his mettle each and every day. 21 years old. He's not rattled. He did say one team, one goal. And he said, it's just a matter of time. He just said in the locker room a couple minutes ago, we just got out of the locker room a couple yards behind me. And he said, it's just a matter of time before it all starts clicking here for the offense, defense, and special teams. And a lot of people will say, well, hey, the kid is just too positive. Maybe he's not seeing what we're seeing. No, I think Darnold's got he's got a good sense about him, and he also knows how quickly games can change in the National Football League. If a couple of those near incompletions to a Bilal Powell or a Quincy Enunwa or to Robbie Anderson, those balls are completed in the future. And then the Jets will be able to sustain drives and pick up some points. So Darnold is very confident, if anything. And don't think his confidence has been shaken despite a 3-game losing streak here early in his career. He's seeing things better, he's seeing things clearer, and he's ready to go.
Now that we know how some of the players are thinking and the mentality that they have about this past loss to Jacksonville, it's time to look ahead at the task at hand. The Denver Broncos are 2-2, coming off a pretty tough loss against the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was actually a very close game, but a threat, especially for Sam Darnold and this offense, is going to be Von Miller, one of the best pass rushers in the league.
I think he's the best pass rusher in the league. Henry Anderson, who actually is a Jets defensive lineman, and we've been talking about him a lot today, was asked about him. He said that he is so explosive, guys can't get their hands on him. And he's able to bend around that edge, and you just can't get to him. And that is the reason why the Jets have to be successful early, because he can't have Von Miller pinning his ears back and just coming at the quarterback. And the Jets, again, are going to have to give their tackles
Look
some
at those
help.
stats.
Yep, 87.5 career sacks. He's got 4 sacks so far this year. And interesting stat here that's not on our slate is that he doesn't have any sacks the past 2 games. So you know he's itching to get after the quarterback. And the Broncos had some good pressure against Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes he was downright a magician on Monday night. What he was doing, getting out,
throwing it left-handed.
Oh yeah, and you see that right there. Von Miller against most quarterbacks in the National Football League. That play right there, that's a sack.
Quickly before we move on, I want to talk about Case Keenum and what his veteran presence brings to the Denver Broncos and their offense. How big of a threat can Case Keenum and the Denver Broncos offense present to this Jets defense this week?
It all starts with the run game, because Royce Freeman and then Lindsey, too. Those are a pair of rookies. You know Lindsey, of course, a Colorado alum. But they're rushing for nearly 150 yards a game. Keenum is a guy who's going to hang in the pocket. He's got some veteran targets on the outside, and Emmanuel Sanders. He's been their big play guy this season. And then also Demaryius Thomas is a veteran who's done a lot of good things in the National Football League. But, like I mentioned before, Keenum was intercepted 3 times in the season opener against the Seattle Seahawks, a game where he threw 3 touchdown passes, but each of the last 3 weeks he's been intercepted once. So Keenum, through 4 games, he's already got 6 interceptions. If you get some pressure on him and are able to contain that Broncos run game, there will be plays to be made in the defensive backfield.
Case Keenum, the Denver Broncos quarterback, we know that he's going to be bringing a lot of pressure and a lot of veteran presence on the field this coming Sunday. But Sam Darnold, the New York Jets quarterback, spoke to the media today and talked about how he is seeing his progression throughout the weeks.
Sam, you talked about making progress and comfortable as a quarterback as time goes on. How close do you think you are to that kind of transferring to a breakthrough on the field?
Yeah, I think as a team, I feel like we're really close. And for me personally, I feel like I'm just on the edge. You know, I just got to continue to find completions, hit my guys deep when they're there. So it'll come. I mean, it's just a timing thing. It's going to click one of these games. I know it is. It's just, you know, kind of waiting on that opportunity.
Is it tough to stay patient and you know that you're making progress when it's not translating?
Well, it can be frustrating on the field to just be like, you know, a foot away from hitting Robbie or, you know, inches away from hitting BP on a go. So those things can be frustrating, but at the same time, I got to understand that it's part of the deal, and it's part of, you know, what you go through as a rookie quarterback coming into a new team, just kind of figuring out the guys. So that's just kind of part of it.
How hard are you on yourself in situations like that? You mentioned the Robbie.
Yeah.
When you go back and look at it, do you kick yourself, or how do you?
Well, again, during the game, I feel like, especially, I just got to move on. You know, next play mentality. Obviously, when it happens, I'm just like, oh man, you know, should have hit him on that one, or, you know, because when I let it go and on the one to BP, I really felt like, you know, we had it, and to be overthrown those guys, it's not a great feeling when it happens, but you just got to move on. But then when we watch the film, it's just, you know, I can't do anything different. I just got to, you know, continue to get the reps and continue to hit those guys in practice, because, you know, we'll start connecting.
Welcome back to Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. Olivia Landis and Eric Allen here at the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center. Yeah, we just heard from quarterback Sam Darnold. And I wanted to touch a little bit on his interactions with the Denver Broncos prior to the draft.
Yeah, because you look at how the dominoes go on draft weekend all the time, right? Because at number 4, we saw Cleveland take Denzel Ward out of Ohio State. Then that set up the Broncos at number 5, and of course they took Bradley Chubb. The question for months was, hey, the Jets are slated right behind the Denver Broncos, but you got to give Mike McCagnon a lot of credit, because he went up from 6 to 3. Who knows? Maybe if Sam Darnold's there at number 5 and the Jets didn't get up to number 3, John Elway would have taken Sam Darnold. Instead, obviously in free agency, they went and got the veteran quarterback in Case Keenum, and then they come back early in the draft and they get Bradley Chubb.
I will say that Sam Darnold looks way better in green and white than I'm sure he would in orange and blue. EA, let's talk about the injury report. I think it's a little bit smaller. The injury report in total is smaller this week, but we do still have a few players that are injured.
Well, the big thing here is that Marcus May was limited today, but he played against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Melbourne, Florida native went back, and he was not worse for the wear. So Marcus May made it out of his first contest in 2018 in good shape. Jerron Peak, he's dealing with that hamstring injury. He didn't play last Sunday. Neil Sterling still in concussion protocol. We'll have to see how those guys progress during the week. But all signs positive on May after playing that first game in 2018.
So we heard from some of the players. We know their mentality moving into this weekend, second home game of the season. Overall, what are some of your key takeaways in the Jets finding success this weekend against the Denver Broncos?
Well, early on, when you look at this game, I just think the Jets got to make some plays early and get that crowd in it. The green and white faithful, they're going to be coming out. They haven't seen the fellas here in a little bit, and it's an opportunity to get back in the mix. You get a win here, things can start looking a little bit different. Then you'll face a Colts team that is still trying to find itself here early in the season. They got Andrew Luck back. And the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of people thought early on this is a contender for the Super Bowl representing the NFC. They've had their struggles early out of the gate as well. The key thing is you got to remind yourself there are 3 quarters of the season left to be played, and the Jets open up with a tough schedule. 3 of their 4 games were away. Now the opportunity is in front of them, and this is a good Denver team who has been up and down so far this season. This is a chance for the Jets to jump on a team who's had a short week, played out in Colorado Monday night, short week of practice, flying out to the East Coast. Got to jump on them early, get the crowd involved in that game, and then take it from there.
So after coming off a loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars away, the Jets are now looking forward to a 3-game homestand this weekend against the Denver Broncos. But that wraps up practice today, presented by SiriusXM. But be sure to catch Eric Allen and our other team reporter, Ethan Greenberg, on practice today, also presented by SiriusXM, Friday at 10:15 a.m. They'll have all of your updates heading into Sunday morning. And you know what? Have a great night.